Hello and welcome to Hard Talk India. 3.5 years after the BJP-led government first came to power, it faces serious problems, but the opposition Congress party is not benefiting. So what sort of opposition is the Congress? How is it performed in Parliament? And what are the prospects of it forming the next government? With me to try and answer those questions is a lady that many consider is possibly the second most powerful person in the party, Rajya Sabha MP, CWC member and General Secretary, Ambika Soni. Mrs. Soni, let's start with the Congress party's performance as the principal opposition during the present Parliament. It's a widespread perception in the press that your performance has been inadequate, perhaps even incompetent. How do you respond to that?
I don't think so. I mean, naturally you don't expect me to agree with you at all, and I'll say why I don't think so. Because as a principal opposition party, it's not only in Parliament where we have taken up issues much to the embarrassment of the government. We've been able to expose them on issues like corruption. You saw the officials of the NDA accepting petty cash on TV, and we drove that issue home.
Well, to be honest, Mrs. Soni, that's an example of, in fact, an opportunity that you missed. Everyone realized that with the Tehelka evidence, you potentially had the government against the ropes. But by refusing to discuss it in Parliament, you made yourselves look unreasonable and you let the government off the hook.
No, it hasn't been let off the hook at all. I mean, they wanted to have an inquiry by a judge, and we were not willing to accept those terms. They were wanting to sidetrack the issue, and we were not going to allow them to sidetrack that issue.
They began by offering you any type of inquiry you wanted, a JPC or a parliamentary inquiry or a judicial inquiry. Instead, you demanded the resignation.
That is where the trap was. The moment we would have accepted what they were offering at that time, in the initial stage of shock that they were under, we would have weakened the case. We have submitted to the President of India 6.25 crore signatures from all over the country, people wanting the government to accept moral responsibility for what they saw on the television.
But you failed to use Parliament as a forum to embarrass the government. There was the leader of the ruling party caught putting his hands out to accept a lack, and the opposition was unable to embarrass the government in Parliament simply because it refused to do the one thing you should have: discuss the issue in Parliament.
You know, discuss the issue, but the severity of the issue, the enormity of the crime would have been underplayed by bickerings and parliamentary language and debates and structure.
Would it have been undermined? Let me take you back to 1989 when the Beaufort scandal erupted. There were just 100 or less opposition MPs at the time, yet they had the Rajiv Gandhi government on the run. Today, you have 113. You virtually control the Rajya Sabha with your other opposition colleagues, yet you made no dent in Parliament. No, just look at the comparison.
No, I don't think you are right when you say there's no dent. The government since then has lost the with it to run this government.
Look at the Prime Minister. With it.
Look at the Prime Minister. Does he seem the same Atal Bihari Vajpayee as he was prior to Tehelka?
But if the government's lost the with it, and if the Prime Minister doesn't look the same, it's not because of you. People say that whether it's Tehelka, whether it's disinvestment, whether it's the wider issues of economic liberalization or labor reforms, on all of these the real opposition is the RSS or the Sangh Parivar. That's a terrible indictment of you as the opposition party.
I mean, we have always held that the RSS makes the agenda for the NDA, or at least for the BJP. They're the ones who've denied it, that the RSS has no role. We've always said that the RSS is the one which lays down the agenda, at least for the BJP. And those who are aligned with the BJP in NDA are closing their eyes to what the RSS dictates are. But let me tell you, let me take up a few issues where we have made a dent and made the government go back. Do you recall a year ago that the government had issued, at least in Gujarat, an order, a governmental order allowing
almost 18 months ago, and that is probably the only occasion on which, with the help of other opposition colleagues, that you were able to get the government to rescind something.
No, take the farmers' issue. We've just completed 5 elections to state assemblies, and I really tell you with some kind of an authority, because we were in the campaign, and the post-election results have shown that the Congress was able to get the confidence and the support of the people, especially the farming community.
You raised an interesting issue. Take the farmers' issue. Take the question of allowing the private sector into defense production. All of those are issues which the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh or the Swadeshi Jagran Manch have not only raised their voices about, captured the press over, but they've actually organized strikes and protests. The Congress isn't even able to enunciate them effectively in the Lok Sabha.
No, it's not. I don't think in the Lok Sabha as well as in the Rajya Sabha, and primarily in the Lok Sabha, Congress has demanded a white paper on disinvestment. This government fights shy. We have demanded transparency in the disinvestment deals. This government doesn't come forward.
Well, you demand a lot, then why do you not succeed in embarrassing? They say in the press, and they're beginning to say this in drawing rooms of India as well, that the problem isn't the Congress party, the problem is the leader of the Congress party. They say that she doesn't understand parliamentary tactics, she has no flair for debate, and as a result, she's unable to put the government on the defensive.
Karan, you don't see the results of all what we raise in the Lok Sabha immediately on the floor of the House. You see them outside in all the elections, whether they are local body elections, whether they are assembly elections, but whatever elections, even in a state ruled by the BJP, which is Gujarat, even in areas like Rajkot, where they have their empire, they've been routed. That's why
okay,
you
you're
see the
saying that your
results
real appeal is working with the people outside
right,
Parliament. All right, I'll come to that, but
where
let's
it
stick
should work.
first to Parliament, because you are the official opposition.
Yes.
It is in Parliament that you should be checking, if not embarrassing, the government. Let me give you an example of the outburst of anger from Mrs. Gandhi at the end of the last parliamentary session. She had a lot of good points to make, and she made them extremely well. But she chose the wrong time, and as a result it had no impact. Successful leaders of the opposition don't make such tactical errors.
No, let me take you on that. It was not the wrong time. Mrs. Gandhi was following democratic and parliamentary traditions and conventions. On the last day of the House, you are not normally supposed to raise contentious issues. And before that last day's proceedings took place, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition had, before the Speaker in his chamber, arrived at a certain agreement on the Telka, how to deal with it, and keeping to that agreement, Mrs. Gandhi and the Congress party were quiet, thinking that both sides will play the role by the rules.
But you see, she had a high moral point to make, and she could have taken the high moral stand, and she would have embarrassed the government. Instead, she sounded shrill, and she sounded belligerent.
No. She neither sounded shrill to the Congress worker, nor did she sound belligerent to the Indian leadership.
But she wouldn't sound shrill to the Congress worker.
Or to
See
the
how
Indian
the press
leadership.
interpreted her.
Indian
By and large,
leadership.
they all said, a good point, well made, but at the wrong time, and no one heard her.
No, everybody read her, because it was widely reported that paid us off in the assembly elections which followed, and it was the Prime Minister who was seen in bad light for having broken and contravened parliamentary tradition.
It's an interesting comparison you make, Mrs. Soni. They say, and you've heard this many times before, that the longer Sonia Gandhi continues as leader of the opposition, the more secure Mr. Vajpayee becomes as Prime Minister. That is not a compliment to Mrs. Gandhi.
No, neither have I ever heard anybody saying that Vajpayee is going to be secure. He looks anything but secure. Look at him in Parliament today.
On Monday,
reading out the statement on the recently held talks, he looked anything but secure.
You mentioned the Prime Minister's behaviour in Parliament on Tuesday when he read out a statement. Let me mention the response of all the other opposition parties when on Monday, just the day before, Mrs. Gandhi invited them to try and work out joint strategy. Every single major opposition party from the left, from the Samajwadi group, from the BSP, boycotted the tea.
It's not a question of boycotting. You know, this is a convention. You invite leaders of the opposition of different parties, and this role is normally falls on the shoulders of the leader of the opposition, in this case Sonia Gandhi.
But just in the next door room, they all accepted Manmohan Singh's invitation.
No, but that's Rajya Sabha. That's a different floor coordination altogether.
Is it Rajya Sabha or is it Sonia Gandhi?
No, it was Rajya Sabha floor coordination being discussed in Manmohan Singh ji's room.
And it was Lok Sabha floor coordination in Sonia Gandhi's?
It was Lok Sabha's conventional tradition followed by the leader of the opposition, and people came.
I put it
Somnath Chatterjee came and discussed individually.
He made it a point of telling the press that he'd only come in his personal capacity. He was not representing his party. He made a point of that.
There is no, that's for them to answer to their following, why they didn't make common cause with opposition together. Congress president followed a tradition, and she will continue to follow all democratic traditions. We are not going to contravene them.
Absolutely.
If they don't attend, it's their lookout.
She follows her traditions, and all marks to her for that. But just look at something else. As recently as April 1999, the left parties agreed to fight and perhaps even form a government under Sonia Gandhi's Prime Minister. Today they formed a People's Front and they refuse to concede that position to her. You're not winning support in Parliament, you're losing former partners.
No, Karan, the winning support in Parliament can only be on issues. There can be floor coordination, but you know every party has their own vote banks. You are going to have elections in UP very soon, and Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav, the leader of the Samajwadi Party, who is very disturbed with the growing clout of Congress Party, especially seeing the results of the recently held elections, he's naturally
So you mean
disturbed.
political rivalries are at
Definitely.
play,
They are
not
not going to
actually the
concede.
Sonia Gandhi credibility factor?
Not at all.
Okay, let's come to the issue you brought up a moment ago, which is that you are actually winning support, that your appeal is getting a response in the country outside Parliament. If that really is the case, then why in critical states like Bengal and Tamil Nadu do you fight elections under the banner and leadership of your own breakaway factions? A government in the making of the future doesn't do that.
No, why not? These are people who left before Sonia Gandhi assumed presidency of the Indian National Congress.
And they haven't returned.
And after she became the president, they said that now things would steps would be taken to reunite
And what
Congress
did they say
workers.
as soon as the elections were over? Mamta has publicly called Congress a burden, not an asset. And look at Jayalalitha. She fought with your support. You stood solidly behind her when she faced problems in terms of whether she could be elected or not. She hasn't even made you a part of the ruling combine. She's used you and, forgive me,
Karan,
discarded you.
I'm sorry, that's good for making an interview point, but fact
It's
is
the fact.
that when we fought
It's
the
a fact.
election, no,
It's
when
been
we
in the papers.
No, when we fought the elections in Tamil Nadu, we were a part of the secular front. We didn't even have one single MLA. We feel that it was a matter of achievement that we were able to bring together Congress-minded forces, whether headed by Mupnarji and the Congress party. We fought together, secular forces fighting in a secular front, to keep the communal forces headed by the BJP out. And
This does not
achieved
sound
that
like the
limited.
explanation of a
No.
party on the verge
No,
of
no,
winning
no.
the next election.
No, look where we were in Tamil Nadu.
How defensive you sound.
No, not at all. In fact, I think we have been able to get Congress-minded forces together in Tamil Nadu, where we didn't have a foot to stand
Very
on.
interesting, you
Because
should
in
say.
Tamil Nadu, it's always been one or the other Dravidian party, and we fought with Jayalalitha
Well, you say
before.
that, but just broaden the picture. There are vast swathes of India as you look at the map where the Congress doesn't feature at all. You don't feature in UP, you don't feature in Bihar, you don't feature in Bengal, you don't feature in Tamil Nadu. 220 seats and you have just 18.
We lost our base in UP some years ago.
10 years ago.
You must understand, it's not being defensive, it's standing where we should be standing. Congress cannot and should not compete with parties giving casteist or sectarian slogans.
Congress
we cannot
aims to
afford to do
become
that.
the
We are
government
oldest
of the
party.
future. You can't, if out of 220 seats in these 4 states, you can only win 18 and your prospects there aren't improving.
No, who says that? When we won the 10 seats of Lok Sabha in 1999,
And you lost one of them earlier this year.
yeah, because he died, unfortunately.
And his widow couldn't retain it,
She
despite
lost
all
it.
the sympathy factor that a
She
widow should
lost
have.
it by a mere 20-odd thousand votes. She lost it by a mere... I'm not
The point
saying
is
into
she
that.
lost it.
Our vote bank increased from a measly 6% to about 18% in the Lok Sabha elections. And you must see that our vote bank in Tamil Nadu has also come up. It has, you can't overnight, nobody is making any claims of overnight being the only party in the country. We've never made that claim.
You couldn't
But
even if you wanted to.
We have been slowly winning back lost ground. Today, Indian National Congress is for having government in 11 of the 28 states of this country. No other political
And in
party
each and
has
every
that.
one of those states, when the Lok Sabha elections are held in 2 or 3 years' time, you will end up facing the anti-incumbency inevitability that follows when you're in power at the state level. The
We
problem
would have if we were the
problem is
BJP.
you don't benefit from other people's anti-incumbency.
You must remember Madhya Pradesh when you talk of the anti-incumbency factor. We had been in government in Madhya Pradesh for 5 years. And we reformed the government in Madhya Pradesh. Why didn't the anti-incumbency
Madhya Pradesh
factor-
looks increasingly like an isolated example. I put it to
No,
Mrs.
I mean,
Soni,
now whichever
whether it's your
thing-
performance in Parliament or whether it's your electoral appeal outside, the cards are stacked against you.
I'm afraid I am not pessimistic. I'm neither that, I am not without hope at all. And in fact, I think the mood in the Congress cadres today is very upbeat.
Let me put it like this. No one denies that the BJP-led government and the BJP itself in particular is suffering serious problems. But the Congress isn't gaining. The government may be in decline, but you're stuck in the doldrums.
All right, just forget the BJP. What's happened in Andhra Pradesh? We've just gone through the local body elections in Andhra Pradesh. You have your super idol Chandrababu Naidu, who is being acclaimed around the world. We won, the resurgent Congress has won the grassroots democratic elections.
So you're seriously telling me that you're on target to win the next national elections, whether they're held in 2 or 3 years' time or even earlier?
We are inching towards victory in the next Lok Sabha election.
In which case, let's talk about the policies that you will come to power with. 10 years ago, you ushered in economic liberalization and you were widely applauded for doing so. Today, you've either backed off it, or you're confused about it, or worse still, the BJP has stolen your clothes and you haven't found a replacement.
No, it's none of those things.
So are you committed to it?
We have never been against, and we have never at all in the years of the opposition, we've been in the opposition, spoken against economic reforms and liberalization.
Let's test that commitment to economic liberalization.
Okay.
What is your party's position on disinvestment? Everyone widely believes it's a badly needed policy. Are you for it or against it?
No, we are for it. We've always said that there are sectors where the government has now no role. What was true 50 years ago need not be today the reality. For instance, we say that the government has no need to be making bread anymore.
Do you accept that point?
No, certainly
the government has to redefine its role, and it must get out of areas where it has no business to be.
Exactly, but that is why we've asked for a white paper. But what we are saying at the same time is that those undertakings which are making profit, government should continue to hold a 51% equity in them.
But you see, this is very interesting. Forgive the interruption.
You're
very clear in terms of the principal formulation that there are areas that government must get out of because it has no business being there. That's very clear.
But also in a transparent
But then when you come up with the qualification comes the trouble, because officially your party's position is do not disinvest above 49% and do not disinvest profitable public sector units.
Certainly.
But who's going to buy a non-profitable public sector unit if in addition they can't even have control over it?
No, in the ones which are disinvested, we want transparency. We want that the assets are evaluated properly. We want to know what this government is doing.
You see, you say you want to know what this government is doing.
Let me give you an example.
You criticize the central government's disinvestment. Your state chief ministers do precisely that. To the public it looks as if the Congress speaks not just in two minds, but with two voices and with a state of confusion.
Karan, take the case of Balco. Whom has the government sold Balco to? To the Sterlite company, right? What were the terms of agreement? Why was the price fixed at the price it was fixed? No answers. And today the same company has been blacklisted by the same government when it comes to purchasing Air India. So that means something is wrong somewhere. That company is okay to buy.
A very interesting example. Your Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh, Ajit Jogi, went hammer and tongs against the government on Balco. 2 weeks later, he announced that he had a list of 29 public sector units which he himself wanted to disinvest and privatize, 7 of which, that's almost 25% of which, are profit-making. A moment ago you said you were not going to disinvest profit-making. He wants to disinvest 7 out of 29 profit-making. Now, is that not a confused party?
As far as his opposition to Balco was concerned, I've just mentioned it to you, that we were objecting to the price fixed. We were objecting to having just one party buying it, like in Air India, now there's only one party.
You also said a moment ago...
You are disinvesting because you want competition.
But you also said a moment ago
buyer, there is no competition.
But you said a moment ago that you would not want to disinvest profitable companies. He wants to disinvest 7 out of 20. By and large, what does that mean?
By and large, there is no ideological thing that you don't run public sector undertakings. We are for public sector undertakings where you are making a profit.
So there's no principle that determines your disinvestment. No, it's practicality.
Disinvestment to the extent that you control 51% in the profit making, you can have a partner, a strategic partner, you can have a partner. Those things are worked out from undertaking to undertaking.
Don't you see, there's so many qualifications, so many riders that instead of your position being clear-cut as an opposition's position should be, your position sounds confused, it sounds contradicted by your state chief ministers, and it sounds very difficult for the layman to understand.
I cannot concede that, because we have gone into economic liberalization. We've talked of reforms. All we now say is that we must go ahead and have reforms with a human face.
Okay.
That is something which we got feedback. As a political party, you cannot stand on one point. You have to be, there are different compulsions, there are different circumstances being thrown up, political challenges to be made.
Then let me throw a political challenge at you. Many industrialists say the time has come for labour reforms. This government has proposed a set of them. Many industrialists want an exit policy. They've discovered that this is something that's throttling investment. Are you in favour of labour reforms? Are you in favour of an exit policy?
Well, we are in favour of labour reforms. Never have we said that we are not for labour reforms. In fact, we've gone on to say that those people who would stand probably to lose their jobs, so many things have not been disinvested because of the pressure of the people working in those enterprises. They should be also assured. They should be
Are you in favour of an exit policy?
VRS.
Are you in favour of an exit policy?
Well, our party has come out and said that yes, depending on case to case.
So in principle you will accept it, but its implementation will be determined case to case.
But
that's an implementation. But this is a very important thing you're saying, because people want to hear the Congress's position. In principle, you're in favour of an exit policy.
Well, safeguarding all the interests of the workers.
With all those important qualifications, but in principle, you're in favour of it.
Well, I think so. Our party has said that.
I don't want you to spoil that very important thing you've made. Let me move on. Let's come to the important question of Kashmir. It's been an issue of the week. If you were to come to power, would you be prepared to accept Kashmir as the main issue between India and Pakistan?
Well, you know, we have discussed Kashmir from Simla Accord onwards. The question of main issue or the centrality of the issue is not the main thing. As far as Congress is, time and time again, our leader of the opposition went and met the Prime Minister before the talks with Musharraf actually took place. And we said that there are a lot of issues, even making Kashmir a major issue to discuss. There are so many aspects of that issue. The cross-border terrorism.
So by and large, you stand by the position of Prime Minister Vajpayee and the present government?
No. I feel that we have lost from the recently held talks. I can't even see those inches of space we might have gained.
The reason I asked you this question is because the whole country heard President Musharraf say repeatedly, just accept Kashmir is the main issue. And you know that a Times of India poll has pointed out that some 78% of the pollsters or the voters identified it and agreed it was the main issue. Can Congress accept it as such?
Karan, when 80% or plus people say yes, Kashmir is the main issue between India and Pakistan, what are they looking at? They realize that you fought wars, people have come in, terrorism is there, innocent people are being killed day in and day out, security personnel are being butchered. This is in the minds of every Indian. We realize that. But Kashmir is not only as Pakistan intends it to be, to make it the central issue, that it's the
make it the main issue for whatever your own reasons may be. The General is not saying that you have to agree with me why it's the main issue. He's simply saying identify it as the main issue. Can Congress make that identification?
No, we feel Kashmir is an issue.
But not the main issue.
There are lots of other issues which have to be discussed along.
The other major issue that you will face, the other major policy decision that you will have to take if you come to power, is what you do about India's nuclear arms policy. Will you continue with the present policy? Will you amend it? Or might you take up a suggestion that General Musharraf made in a recent interview to the BBC of jointly seeking some form of denuclearization within South Asia?
Well, he may have said that in his BBC interview. Sonia Gandhi said that throughout her recently held tour to the United States.
So there the two of you are in agreement?
No. I mean, what Mr. Sharaf may have said, I don't know. I don't know the details of all what he said. But Mrs. Gandhi did express the concern of India, because we have never been for nuclear
So Mrs.
weapons.
Gandhi could agree, if she becomes Prime Minister, to talks to see whether there is a form of joint denuclearization possible?
Certainly. You have to now accept that you are a nuclear weapon owning country.
And you want to now reduce that?
Reduce that, set in place some instrumentalities which would avoid any mishaps.
Mrs. Soni, I've left to the end the question that many consider the most important. If Congress wins the next election outright, will Mrs. Gandhi be your Prime Minister?
If you ask Ambika Soni, yes. But the Congress point of view has always been that the elected members of Parliament will elect their own leader.
And what happens to those who turn around and say that if you don't make her Prime Minister, your chances of winning are that much greater? Set her aside, you'll win the election.
Well, let the people of India decide. Mrs. Gandhi herself answered that question in the United States.
But at the moment, you're neither confirming her candidature nor denying it. You're going to end up possibly with the
Ambika
worst of
Soni,
both worlds.
No. I said if you ask me, she is a candidate for Prime Minister.
But what's the party's official position?
She is the candidate for Prime Ministership.
But she keeps saying when she goes abroad that there are so many other candidates.
Because that is the democratic way of saying.
Is
That's
this
the
another
liberalness
example
of,
of Congress confusion and obfuscation?
No. There is no confusion in this. None whatsoever.
She is your candidate.
She is our candidate. And
There,
for the
Ambika
people of
Soni,
India to decide.
Thank you very much for talking to Hard Talk India.
Thank you.